What is up, typography? Let's talk about craft. So, I want to sit with you for a little bit and have a conversation about the idea of craft. What do I mean by that word craft, and how does it relate to what we're talking about in this room? So, first of all, when I'm talking about craft, I'm talking about how well your project is executed. You can spend all the time in the world to use your process well, do really stellar research, come up with what feels like a great solution to your design problem, and then mess it up in the end with poor craft. Craft is all about the way that you execute your ideas and what your end result looks like. So, say it's a physical creation. Is it printed properly? Did you cut it down? Was it cut down by a print shop? Was it cut down clean and neatly, or the edges as they should be? If it's supposed to have color that goes all the way to the edges of your document, as in it's a full bleed image, then are there any areas where the image does not go all the way to the edge as it's supposed to? How's your spelling? How's your grammar? All those things are really important elements of craft, and you want to make sure that you put time and effort and energy to make sure that your craft is done well, the same way that you need to put time, effort, and energy into making sure that your overall project is executed well, right? So what does that look like? When it comes down to examining the craft of your end result, it's a little bit, our conversation is a little bit different in our online environment because we can't print out our documents, print out our end results, and put them up where we could examine them and really see what you've created. But we can talk about some of the other important aspects outside of what your object, your document, your finished piece looks like physically, and we can still touch on those physical characteristics that have to be on point as well. So let's start digitally. Good craft means, as I already mentioned, things like your spell checking and grammar and stuff of that nature. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And having great craft is not about making sure you never ever make a mistake, because we all make mistakes. Having great craft is, even in the midst of making a mistake, you learn from it and you try to do better next time. That is also a part of having a great craft. Say you are designing something that has images in it. Are those images pixelated? You want to make sure that the image quality is great. You want to make sure that when you scaled that image, you changed the size of it, that you did that proportionately. Are all those things done, that you check, that you make sure? You want to make sure that if you're making a document that is meant to be printed, check your color space. Is it CMYK or is it RGB? If it's meant to be printed, you want to make sure that it's CMYK. That is a part of great craft. Are you making something that's meant to exist on the web? Check your image's resolution. If it's meant to exist on a web, then you don't want your image to have a resolution of 300 ppi. You want to take that resolution down to 72, because then that's going to make sure that when that image uploads into that digital space, that it does so quickly and the file size isn't too large. These are some of the things that you want to take into consideration when you are thinking about your craft. And then if we're talking about a physical document, something you have to print, right? Are the colors what you intended them to be? When you're working on a project, you should always make sure you give yourself enough time to do a test print. Look at it with your eyes, check the color, read your copy, make sure that everything is as it should be. And if it isn't, make adjustments and changes. And if it isn't, don't be afraid to start all over again. If you have an image and the image is poor quality, it's too dark, or it's pixelated, or it just really doesn't fit in with the overall aesthetic of what you're designing, don't be afraid to start all over with your images and go and find the right one for that specific design. Or create an image that's the right one for that specific design. You have to be willing to fully commit yourself to the designs that you are creating. Because if you're not willing to fully commit yourself into your work, then how do you expect anyone else to care about the work that you're making, to think that it's good, to want to invest in you and say hire you and give you employment, or hire you to do a specific project for them? How do you expect someone to trust you to do the work if your work doesn't show good craft, if your work doesn't show that you have a willingness to see where you make mistakes and errors and try to correct those mistakes and errors? Craft is such an important thing that can, as I mentioned already, help your design communicate its message and be strong, or it can weaken the overall impact of what you're trying to create and what you're trying to say, right? So inside of us, we all have things that can like help us be better with craft, or can hinder us when it comes down to craft. Maybe you have a super busy life and it gets hectic and you're exhausted, and reading over that information one more time just feels like a very difficult task for you to do, to catch any proofreading errors. I know I have definitely been there, especially this semester. Right now, outside my window, it looks like an apocalypse, and it's looked like this all day, with the sky being orange and dark. Yeah, so we all know what it feels like to be exhausted, to feel tired and not feel up to the challenge, and that's okay too. But you want to be mindful of where you are so that you can understand how it may hinder you in your overall end results when it comes down to the projects you're working on, right? So craft takes time and it takes practice. And when we're talking digital, we're talking physical. If we're talking about working with tools like cutting with an X-Acto knife or another cutting tool, a part of craft in that area is making sure that you're using a proper metal cork back ruler. A ruler with a cork on the back is going to keep it from sliding across your document when you're trying to cut it. Little things like that are big things, actually. Using a metal cork back ruler is a really big, really helpful tool for not just cutting straight lines with X-Acto knives, but also just your safety in general. Like, it sounds like a nightmare to be cutting with a ruler that doesn't have a cork on the back to prevent sliding, and then the ruler slides and then you cut yourself, right? So in that instance, it's craft, but it's also a safety issue as well. So there's all these little things that you have to pay attention to. And at the end of the day, craft is about the details. It's the tiny details as well as the big details. And you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time, because waiting until the last minute to get your work done, to get your projects done, executed before the deadline, is also a poor craft decision. Because if you wait until the last minute, then you're not giving yourself enough time to fully be able to evaluate what your end results look like so that you can make corrections for craft mistakes. So there's many more things that can fall into the area of craft, and it honestly really depends on what you're trying to make, the types of craft decisions you have to be considering. So it's impossible for me to cover them all in this video, but what I can say, and what I have already said, is that at the end of the day, craft is about paying attention to what you've done. It's about being willing to see your mistakes and correcting them and being willing to learn from them. And it's about making sure that if you want someone else to care about the work that you've created, you have to prove that you care about it first. Right? All right, that's all I have for you right now. Thank you for watching. Bye.